lost.
OK, so the Rovers would never make it into an Alfred Hitchcock film set, and its characters have never had fingers made out of knives. Claws, maybe, but don't be fooled. As the witching hour approaches, it's time to lock the door, grab the cushion, and sit on the edge of your seats as we take a walk on the dark side of the street with some Coronation Street nightmares.
It was scary.
Scream if you want to. Nobody will hear you.
And there have been plenty of scary moments to keep us watching.
Light a candle.
I was genuinely scared.
Probably the scariest people on the street are the writers. They come up with the stories. There's nothing to be afraid of.
Come on down! Down-to-earth entertainment may well be what Coronation Street is all about, but there's always been a spiritual presence. And not just behind the bar of the Rovers.
What the flaming hell was you doing down there? Investigating for phenomena.
Ghostbuster Roy Cropper wasn't the only one to dabble in the paranormal. Back in 1977, the first street séance took place on the hallowed ground of Hilda's back room.
I don't think it's easy, because if anybody's got a septic attitude, it sort of puts up an obstacle, like.
It was Hilda, it was Pat Phoenix, Betlin. I wasn't there, was I? Oh, was I there? Oh.
Who's that? Stan going to the cars, so we'll have to wait.
Oh, they were halcyon days.
27 years later saw another attempt to make contact with a ghost from Corrie past, Vera Lomax.
Did you see his face?
But in 1996, one dear departed character didn't wait for an invitation.
Ivy!
And for a while, we were all scared that we hadn't seen the last of Ivy Tilsley.
The blanket on and my blood went cold.
Well, I shan't be coming back, so you've no need to worry about that.
But some of the scariest scenes had nothing to do with the paranormal. Mind you, there was nothing normal about Brenda Fiennes.
It's Sarah, isn't
When
it?
Bethany's dad died in a car crash, Sarah decided to pay her last respects, but soon discovered that laying his ghost to rest wasn't an option for his grieving mum.
And this is your little girl, isn't it? Yours and Neil's.
Granny Brenda, yeah, Bethany's grandma. Oh, she was a bit, you know, she was like something out of Rosemary's Baby or something, wasn't she?
If we just say a word of thanks. For what we are about to receive, may the Lord make us truly thankful. Amen.
Amen.
You know that fantastic bit right at the beginning of The Exorcist where the child comes down in the middle of a family dinner party and she's sweet and then suddenly she just stands there and pees on the carpet and there's the slow dribble onto the carpet and you think, oh dear, this film's not going to be very nice. And I felt that there were a few of those peeing on the carpet moments for Brenda.
How do you mean?
I buried my only child, and when I turned away from his grave, there were you and little Bethany, my little granddaughter. It was like God was talking to me.
When Granny Brenda first started, we knew something was going to kick off, but we just didn't know what.
Would you like to meet your real dad? Well, I'll take you there. You'll love him, I promise you. Cross my heart and hope to die.
When we found out, we would just be like, you never. What?
Hands off my daughter! Get away!
You're not a mother.
Come on.
I thought she were lost.
Well, she's not. She's with me. She wouldn't be lost because I wouldn't let her.
Juliet really absolutely terrified me when she was doing some of the scenes. Oof. It's like, ooh, you're creepy.
Don't you come near her. Just don't dare. Just don't ever, ever touch her again.
I do have this habit of staring at people. Maybe they did think I was weird.
But not as weird as what came next. The balmy Brenda story saw some of the scariest scenes that soap has ever seen, as Granny B took Bethany on a trip to the dark side.
You see, we are just like these flames.
Quick, get the bus.
We burn for a short while.
Is she here? Is Bethany here? Is she all right?
Because you and me, we're going to heaven.
It was horrible. I was like, oh, this is nice, this is nice. It's a bit creepy.
But whilst the sinister scene was set, the actors weren't quite as serious.
I mean, she's so funny, Eileen Derbyshire. I think I was a bit menopausal. I kept forgetting her name and she kept forgetting mine.
Brenda, please.
We did a lot of laughing between takes. I know it doesn't look like it.
Thou shalt not kill.
But, no, we did have a bit of a laugh up there.
And they say it's children you shouldn't work with. For the twins that share the role of Bethany, reconstructing scenes from The Omen in the middle of Salford was all in a day's work.
It's a tricky thing to ask a 3-year-old to do. Suddenly turn on them and shout at them or cry, but they don't think about it twice. The minute they've finished, they say, "Oh, is that a wrap?"
By the time Brenda had come back down to earth, there weren't many kind words coming her way.
You've put her through hell.
Except from the actress who played her.
Whenever anybody's challenged me about, "Ooh, you're nutty Brenda or balmy Brenda," then I start to get very defensive because I've thought it all through in my head.
Thank you for stopping me.
I believe, you know, that there's a huge further history of lovely Brenda. Sadly, nobody else does.
But Brenda's not the only person to go a bit bonkers after a spell on the street. A glance back at 44 years reveals that quite a few characters have been touched by a spell of Weatherfield weirdness.
What do you want? I want to talk to you.
Stop it!
I tell you, Jack, this is the best thing you've done.
I wouldn't want to live next to any of them.
But back in 1997, there was one family you really wouldn't want to live next door to.
The Battersbys were first described as the family from hell, and when we first saw them, that's exactly what they were.
We've made your new neighbours.
We've all met people like that.
Hello.
Just like, ah!
Be careful, Norman.
They played loud music, they shouted at everybody, shouted at each other, and basically caused a lot of chaos when they first arrived.
Are the Battersby's neighbours from hell called Sayark?
For 7 long years, the Battersbys have brought mayhem, mess, and more than a little mischief into the lives of their street neighbours. For the fans, though, it was a different story altogether.
Every time I walk into town with Bruce, everyone's always bibbing around going, "All right, Les, all right, Kirk." Neighbours from hell on the street, but the public love us.
But back in 1999, the viewers' vote wasn't quite so favourable for one particular Battersby.
Do you know, I'd forgotten that Greg Kelly was a relative of the Battersbys.
Well, it's hardly surprising. If it was hard for us to believe that gorgeous Greg was a descendant of the Battersby clan, it was even harder for actor Stephen Billington to play the part of the black sheep of the family.
It was a bit of a challenge to play that kind of a part.
Greg.
Shut up.
He just had this very innocent, beautiful face that should have been on the top of chocolate boxes. Greg.
I said, shut up. Previous to that, I'd played just romantic roles.
Greg.
From romantic hero to evil villain, Greg was soon robbing Sally blind, terrorising the family and even taking them hostage. Dastardly deeds that turned him into public enemy #1.
I was attacked with a walking stick on Kensington High Street, of all places, by an old woman who was just so angry with me that all she could get out was, You fool. Since then, I've played nothing but evil bastards, but...
Becoming a baddie can clearly be a bit of a nightmare. So what does it take to make a great Corrie villain?
Hello, sweetheart.
Who better than actor Lee Boardman, better known as Bad Boy Jez Quigley, to give us a masterclass in creating a soap psycho?
I just thought immediately, I'm going to make him completely evil and a complete psychopath.
The first rule of soap villainy? You've got to look the part.
For me, it was his eyes. His eyes were just evil.
Rule number 2, no need to shout.
Who's Leanne? If you grass me up,
You know that I can't give you the second chance. A lot of actors think that to play a complete psychopath, you've got to sort of rant and scream and rave about the place, and I just think it's the exact opposite.
Sometimes his little looks were just frightening, or he'd smell you, or he'd kind of touch your hair, and it was like really sinister.
Which brings us to rule number 3. Intimidate your co-stars in any way possible.
Lee decided that it would be quite fun and good for his character, so he says, to make it kind of homo-erotica.
Hello, Psycho. He'd never know if I was going to get close to him or if I was going to sort of kiss him or, you know, punch him. And the look on Simon's face was even more like, what is he doing?
And number 4, when it comes to the grand finale, take your inspiration from the Hollywood greats.
I just remembered Leslie Crowther kind of doing, come on down!
Stephen James MacDonald, come on down!
I just couldn't keep my face straight, because that's what Lee does. He's like, hey, all right, mate.
You go with what you're good at.
And finally, make sure you know when it's time to go.
It's just been wonderful. And while it lasted, probably have ended up, you know, getting off with Sally Webster. I'll see. I'm quite proud of the fact that I think I was the first genuine psychopath in a soap.
But he certainly wasn't the last.
I'm not a psycho.
No, I never said you were.
Coming up, more trick-or-treats.
You should have stayed at the party, Maxine.
And some real-life nightmares on Coronation Street.
It was just excruciating.
The town of Weatherfield has been home to conmen, axemen and madmen. But when it comes to really scary characters, the men don't get a look in.
Women are the wickedest on the street. I mean, they always have been, and I hope they always will be.
I think it's got to be Gail Platt.
Ivy Tilsley.
Animal! Karen MacDonald. Would not want to get on the bad side of it.
Come on, bring it on.
Fishwives. There's not one woman there who isn't scary.
No, you don't want to mess with those northern lasses.
We've missed it!
But it's a southern stranger that wins the title Wicked Witch of Weatherfield.
Scary, evil, bunny boiler.
Listen, please! If you like her so much, marry her instead!
My favourite line from my mother recently has been, has Anita got a favourite cuddly toy? Will it end up in a band?
It's great fun playing outsiders, and they quite often end up a bit mad and obsessive.
I think it became apparent that Not All Was Well With Maya was the first time she ever appeared on screen.
If I said a bottle of wine, nice food, and good music, you'd say...
I'd say... your sentences need more verbs.
She started off as this kind of lawyer, you know, with her own flat and a job and a career and a life and a wardrobe full of nice clothes. Well, before I know it, I've kind of lost my job and I'm nicking dogs.
So where is she then?
I've no idea.
Come on, what have you done with her, Cruella?
Look, can we do this some other time?
How can you trust someone that doesn't like dogs? Even Hitler liked dogs.
I like dogs in their place. Everyone enjoy the kebabs, by the way.
I'll get you for this.
There was a point where I definitely thought I could get a lot of flack for this.
You won't get away with this. I know it was you. You're murdering dog killer.
It's more than for anything else. You know, I could blow the street up and they wouldn't mind as much as my kidnapping a dog.
Just joking about the kebabs, by the way.
To be that unlikable is quite scary, but it's great as a character to get to play that sort of stuff.
This is madness!
That's why it's fun, too.
Right, hang on!
Occasionally when we finish scenes, the sound department will put on a piece of music that's like a kind of theme tune. So when I was doing the dog story, I had the Wicked Witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz. I'll get you my pretty and your little dog, too.
But for actress Sacha Bahar, the real horror movie moment was one that we viewers never got to see.
Action. One of the most unpleasant, if comic, moments for me was when I start chucking things at Dev in the shop. And for some reason, the props department hadn't managed to stick the lid on to the spaghetti bolognese.
If you like her so much, marry her instead!
Cut.
Sorry. And I just had spaghetti bolognese dripping down my head. Everyone said it was like the Carrie moment, you know, when she gets all the pig's blood over the top of her head. It was disgusting.
Yes, however scary the street storylines may be, for the Corrie cast, the real nightmares are the ones that are completely unscripted.
I think the best thing that went wrong, for me anyway, was the day when we had an earthquake in Manchester. The whole building shook. And I was like, what? And it was an earthquake.
I felt the earth move under my feet.
I did. Oh, my God. Bloody hell, what is that? That was quite a terrifying moment on Corrie.
And if it's not exploding sauce bottles or earthquakes giving the cast nightmares, it's the ridiculous costumes. The Rovers' Halloween parties are an absolute scream.
We all turned to each other and said, the saddest thing is that we look more glamorous today than we've ever looked. We had no lens glasses behind it, so I had to go in next best thing.
Hey, Steve, that hair looks good. Steve was a werewolf. They'd stuck all this hair on with wig glue.
It was itchy. Because it was real hair.
I've got Reeds at Vera and less hair on me head.
And then I just decided halfway through the scene that I'd just pull it off. It was just excruciating.
Luckily, most of the makeup is easy to remove. Unless, that is, you've got a particularly warped sense of humour.
Andy takes a good beating. Split lip, bruises, cuts, scabs, blood all over the place. I kept the makeup on and I drove home. I was living with my mum and dad at the time. Knocked on the door, fell through the door, and it's one of the few times I've ever heard my mum really swear.
And it serves you right if your tea's come. Oh, my God! Jim! Jim!
When they realised that I was having a joke, then they actually did beat me up.
Over the last 44 years, the street has used hundreds of gallons of blood and gore. Tomato ketchup to you and I. But in 2002, the makeup department had to order extra supplies when the nation's favourite Corrie killer moved into Weatherfield.
Tricky Dicky.
Richard Hillman.
Whatever you chose to call him, everybody had their favourite Hillman horror moment.
There's nothing to be afraid of.
When he battered the woman over the head with a spade. It was just typical Richard Hillman.
One of my favourite Richard Hillman moments ever is when Emily Bishop is watching the TV and all of a sudden the TV goes and Richard Hillman walks through the back door with my hat and my jacket on.
Like this. Like, you know, a real villain.
Richard's there like this with a crowbar. Clunk.
I think the scariest Richard Hillman moment would probably have to be... Well, I can't even say it properly, but...
You should have stayed at the party in back scene.
Tracy Shaw runs around the room going... Clunk.
Right.
Overnight, Richard Hillman became Richard Killman. And we all know you can't be a Corrie killer and live happily ever after. So 70 million of us tuned in to make sure he didn't go quietly.
I think it's etched in the nation's consciousness, that image of him, like, with you and me, always and forever, as they go over. Just like,
When the street finally settles its score with its Corrie horrors, you can be sure of a sensational send-off. But in 1998, Corrie had a chilling surprise in store for us with the demise of the supermarket psycho Anne Malone.
I think the reason why everyone remembers it is because it was such a bizarre ending.
A death scene set in Freshco's. Some Freshco's freezer, you know, what more can you want from a soap?
She's just a little bit too perfect, was Anne Malone. A little bit too good to be true.
Didn't she start off really nice and really sweet, like all great Luna characters do, who kind of like come from nowhere and just be, you know, and their eyes kind of get bigger and the storyline kind of gets weirder?
I think when you realise that she wasn't a nice person was when she tried to kill everyone. Basically, once she was scorned by Curly, she set out on a vendetta to destroy his life, which involved WD-14 fish fingers, which is classic Corrie. Other soaps, it would have been something more elaborate like ricin or cyanide, but no, Corrie does WD-40. So it was one of those ones where it's like, have you heard? What? Well, apparently I'm going to try and kill everyone and I end up being found in a freezer. I mean, it's brilliant, because those scenes were great, because you have this real Jobsworth security guard, Trevor. She must have said Trevor about 200 times.
Trevor!
Trevor.
Trevor!
Trevor.
Trevor!
Trevor. How we finally found her was hilarious. Frozen in the Kama Sutra position in a freezer. I suppose if you wanted to be really naff, you could say that Anne Malone was a cold character. But, you know, in the end, she chilled out.
Don't be fooled. Some of the scariest Corrie characters may be safely 6 feet under, but the nightmare on Coronation Street is far from over. Some of the scariest characters on Corrie are still at large.
I would say that Norris is the scariest person on the street. He's a malevolent presence, isn't he?
Norris, look!
I think probably the scariest person's Fred Elliott. There's something wrong there.
I think Roy Cropper. I mean, you know, what's he all about? That's a bit scarier than Richard Hillman, for me.
I'll see you.